Welcome back to episode 81.
81?
Of In the Shadow of the Evening Trees. I'm Jen Von Ebers.
I'm Dave Von Ebers. That's insane.
It is insane.
I have a new Clash t-shirt.
Yes, that he got for his birthday.
A birthday t-shirt. I can't really, if you're looking on the video, watching on the video, I can't really get in position to show it off.
The whole thing, yeah.
Let's say the Clash. It's from the Sorted Out tour from the UK in 1978.
Fantastic.
Well, the t-shirt isn't. It's the image from like the posters.
That is true.
Because if it was a t-shirt from 1978, it would be
not in that good condition.
Not in good condition and maybe a little foul. I don't know. Oh, you know what I forgot? Hold on. Very important. Very important.
We don't have tequila tonight.
Can't do a podcast without some liquid refreshment. It's just water.
And mine is just water too. And my bedazzled water bottle. If you're just listening to it, I have a pink water bottle that it has lots of fun stickers on it.
Multiple stickers. I have and not that old University of Illinois water bottle. It looks old because I put it in the dishwasher multiple times, and you're probably not supposed to do that.
That's okay. We're a little baby hiatus we were off for
not really planned.
Yeah. But I know you guys missed us, so we're just like, we better make another episode because people are clamoring, when are you guys coming back? And we're just like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
For the people.
Yeah. If anything for our fans, we'll do that for you. So we are back.
We had many things. We had my birthday.
Yes.
Which, normally that's like a national holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't remember what else we had.
It's a lot going on.
We had a lot going on. We did have, and we'll talk about that more, but we attended, as we've mentioned many times before, the Lambda Legal Midwest Region Bond Foster Civil Rights Celebration last night, and we'll talk about that. But I have to point out that it is currently, I'm looking at the date, it is currently May 10, 2025, as we're recording this, May 10th. So it is the Saturday before Mother's Day.
Yes.
Happy Mother's Day Eve.
Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day to all the bad mothers. No, that's like
bad.
Yeah, it's an Isaac Hayes reference from the theme song to the movie Shaft.
That is true.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. You're the real heroes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Unlike us deadbeats. Not a deadbeat dad.
No.
Nah.
No. So like David said, we attended the gala last night at the modern wing of the Art Institute, which is spectacular. And I was thinking about this today, I bet it was a high attendance. There's several hundred people there, but
that was great.
I bet it was like a lot of who's who in Chicago. Like very well-connected, not mob, not that kind of connected.
When you're from Chicago, you always have to clarify. We're not talking about the outfit.
Yeah, but just very ensconced in everything that's going on in Chicago. So I was fascinated to think, like, I wonder how many people there were like just really like just who you should know in Chicago.
Well, last year we sat next to Lori Lightfoot, the former mayor. She was already out of the mayor's office.
She sat in the same row as us, and she walked right by me, like right here, and I was like, "Hi, Mayor." She just said hello, so that was kind of fun. But what a special night, and it was always just so fun to see what Lambda Legal is doing in the world, because if you don't follow them on social media, they are in a lot of really high case stakes of cases that they're taking to court that go up to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not just something that's just happening local in Chicago. These are things that are around the country that they are fighting for. And when you see the amount of bills that are against the LGBTQ plus community, it is insane.
It is.
And he showed the CEO of Lambda Legal talked about like how many states currently have laws on the books trying to change things, and it's almost all of them.
I mean, in almost every state in the country has like proposed legislation, including Illinois and New York and California. Now, those bills may be unlikely to pass in Illinois or New York or California, but the fact that there are politicians out there sort of wasting everybody's time and targeting vulnerable people for, political purposes, for really crass, I don't know how to speak today, probably, really crass purposes, that's sad, whether it's here or anywhere else. So.
And so when we arrived, they had cocktails out on the patio. It was a little chilly.
Yeah.
Because
it's still winter in Chicago, apparently.
Yeah, it was actually warmer when we left than when we actually walked in there. So that was kind of weird. And I just had like a light sweater on, so I was happy that I wasn't like freezing. But I was like contemplating, like, do I wear my winter coat? But what if there's no coat check? I'm going to be dragging around this coat. It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing. It was a whole
thing. I opted not to do that. But one of the things that David and I like to do is just walk up to a table and
talk to people.
Because they had.
You mean you like to do that?
You did it too. You did it. You were right there with me. But a lot of the they had food afterwards and drinks and stuff like that. But then they had like high top tables. Not very many, but like one of the things that we had the first round. There were several rounds we went to. It was like grilled chicken. It was like a pasta with peas and things like that. But obviously trying to stand and trying to cut your chicken very hard. So we ended up just walking up to a table and just like, hey, can we set our plates down here? And then just started striking up a conversation, which is always fun because then you feel like, how do you get involved in Lambda Legal? Who do you know here and what's your story? And we learned a lot about other people and had some great conversations. So
We did, although I made the critical error. I trimmed my beard a little too short.
See, I didn't think so. I like it.
Okay, well that's good, but it is very short.
But the precision you have with it is spectacular.
Well, no, that's the problem. Actually, that's why it ended up so short.
Then I got to go a little bit.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Until there's nothing left.
Then I'm just gonna shave.
Then you walk out. What happened? I don't even want to talk about it.
It is kind of funny how when you look at somebody with a beard, you're like, oh well, you just kind of assume the hair kind of all grows evenly at the same length, like on the top of your head. And of course, I mean, I'm sure that's not even true on the top of your head, but it seems like it.
Right.
But when you actually go to the trouble of trimming it, all of a sudden you're like, why is this part so much longer than that part? And anyway, so long story short, it ended up trimmed very close to the.
But it goes fast. So.
It does go fast,
yeah.
And my hope is that maybe it'll grow out a little more evenly. But after I was done, I'm like, oh, maybe and I'm looking in the mirror the whole time. But you're concentrating on what you're doing, so you're not necessarily getting the whole picture.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought that so much thought has to go into that, but you're right, because as soon as you trim one side, you're like, do the other side, okay, this one is a little bit loose.
And not only that, but when it always looks fine afterwards. And then 2 days later, it seems like there's some parts longer than others. You know what I mean? It's like, and then you realize that it's complicated. It's like, it's kind of like being a walrus. But they don't worry about it.
They don't.
Maybe I should be.
Yeah,
I am the walrus.
Be like a walrus. If you hear scratching right now, one of our cats is scratching on the hardwood floor. Not sure why.
Thankfully, it's not actual hardwood.
It's Gordy. She's trying to. She's scratching underneath. Maybe there's something, a toy underneath the dresser. Yeah. Now Waffle's in here, so it might be.
It's cat mayhem.
It is cat mayhem. We decided to keep the door open because even though the cats have not really paid attention to us all day, as soon as we shut the door, they're going to want to be here immediately.
They'll stick their little paws under the door.
Yeah. So we had a fantastic time, like we said, and also in this caption or the post on our website, we will put the link again of the donations. Yes. It's not too late to donate. After the program, they do like another fundraising round, where they try to raise more money. For those of you who don't know, Lambda Legal is all on donations since the get-go. So it's always been that way. And within like 10 minutes, and then plus they had somebody who was donating. If we raised 50,000, they were matching at another 50,000. But within 10 minutes, another over $100,000 was raised. Yep. So it was amazing.
But don't let that deter you from giving.
Right.
Because the $100,000 is great, but every nickel and dime counts.
Absolutely.
And it's literally true. Not everybody has $100 to throw around or $500. We saw some people made some pretty sizable donations, and that's great. But $10, $25, any amount helps, because I feel like this is the Jerry Lewis telethon right now, But no, seriously, any amount helps because this is really critical work. They're fighting against, a very, very aggressive federal government and some very aggressive state governments who have just decided to demonize this particular group of people. And then it's not just that they're doing it, in a political sense, but they're using the law to attack these folks. And it's really, most of what they're doing is pretty clearly unconstitutional and illegal. And so in a sense, a lot of the things, the Trump administration, a lot of these more conservative states are kind of vulnerable in court. But that means that the work that Lambda does is very important, but they also have a very realistic opportunity or very realistic chance of winning.
That's true.
So, it really does matter. This isn't just tilting at windmills. There's really a chance that they can put an end to a lot of this nonsense.
And the thing that's unfortunate about all of this is the time, the resources, the money that is spent on fighting things that we shouldn't be fighting for in 2025, to be honest. And it's like, however much progress has been made over 50 years, it's like they're trying to just pull back and change things for people. And it's just like, why? I don't understand it. It's like so insane.
And they are going after, wins that the community has already had. They're making it very clear that they're going after things like marriage equality. And this, this reminds me so much of what happened with abortion rights in this country. And I know it's a very controversial issue for some people, but I'm talking in this context about the strategy from the time that the Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade in, I think, 1973, something like that, until the Dobbs decision a couple years ago. Opponents of abortion rights, chipped away, got the courts to recognize exceptions and limitations on the Roe decision and so forth. And they did that until they got to the point where they actually could overturn Roe versus Wade. And the thing that's significant about the Dobbs case is, number one, it wasn't the kind of case that the Supreme Court ordinarily would even have taken, because the issue in that case was decided law. There was nothing new about that case. Secondly, even if the Supreme Court had wanted to uphold the Mississippi law in question there, they could have done that without overruling Roe versus Wade. So they chose to take the case when, under normal procedures, they wouldn't have even taken the case. And then secondly, they went much further than they had to reach the desired result. So what that means is that, like anything else, what you think of as an established right kind of falls apart a little bit at a time and then all at once, right? And that's what they're very clearly trying to do the same thing with basically established rights for LGBTQ plus people. And it's cause for real serious concern right now.
It is, and you feel like, once you get those battles and you win those battles, then you feel more secure about your future and about what you can do and everything like that. But to know that that's hanging in the balance and it can be changed at any time is just beyond.
And I was just going to say, along those lines, American conservatives do not believe that anything is ever resolved. There's no constitutional principle, there's no legal principle or political concept or whatever that's ever resolved in their minds. They will never accept that they lost an argument, even if they lost that argument in the 1880s or the 1920s or whatever. Everything is up for grabs in the minds of American conservatives. And in one sense, look, we can all argue that the law should change or we should reinterpret the Constitution. I don't like the cases that decided you have a personal right to carry, handguns and long rifles and things like that. I don't like those decisions. The Heller case and the McDonald versus City of Chicago case. And if I had an opportunity as a lawyer to argue that the Supreme Court should overturn those, I probably would. So, I get it. You have the right in our country to advocate whatever you believe in. But we have to understand that none of the rights that you have, not a single one of them, is secure, right? As long as there are people who are willing to say things like, oh, birthright citizenship? Nah, that's not what the 14th Amendment means. Due process rights? No. This group of people doesn't get due process rights, even though the Constitution says they do.
Right.
Everything is up for grabs. And it has been for a long time. That's the approach the American conservative movement takes, is that they will not accept defeat in any circumstance. I mean, in a way, that's even what happened after the 2020 election, and a lot of people just refused to accept that Trump had lost. But that's also kind of a special case,
right?
Because those people were genuinely insane. But anyway, I kind of got off track on that.
But I was going to say that even though it is it still is an uplifting event and a very hopeful kind of thing. So it is one of those things, and I like that Lambda Legal, they're saying is like, we have your back, kind of thing. So that part is really nice. So it was very inspirational in that point. And then obviously people who are joining the fight and contributing what they can to help with this is amazing. So it was a great time.
And I have to point out, from a kind of a personal point of view, that one of the things that made me very happy about the event last night is they honored a law firm that I worked for many years ago, that
Yes.
I started my career with, a firm called Jenner & Block, and the main office is in Chicago. They started in Chicago, and they have offices all over the place now. But Jenner has worked with Lambda Legal and other organizations. They've been involved in the fight against LGBTQ plus discrimination for a long time. And the event that we attended, and I've said this before, was named after one of my colleagues at Jenner & Block, who I actually knew pretty well, a guy named Bon Foster. We started there at the same time. We took the bar exam together. We worked there for our first few years in the practice. And so it was, it was very appropriate that they honored Jenner, but also, it was really nice to see. And unrelated to the Lambda Legal connection, it is also, Jenner & Block is also one of the very few big firms that stood up to the Trump administration when he, issued executive orders attempting to sanction them for essentially doing their jobs as lawyers and representing the clients that they're hired to represent. And doing the kind of pro bono work that they do. Jenner & Block said, we're not going to back off, and they took them to court and they won. I mean, it's, none of these cases are fully resolved yet, but they took them to court and they won. So it also is a matter of particular pride to me, again, separate from the issue of Lambda recognizing them, which was great in its own right, but it meant a lot to me that Jenner, stood up to Trump.
For sure.
And I don't know who Trump thinks he's messing with, because some of these law firms
don't give a crap.
and Wilmer Hale is one of them. The guy who's the executive director of the Midwest region for Lambda started his career at Wilmer Hale, so we have a similar kind of connection there. In any event, good to see some of the law firms sticking up for themselves and fighting back.
For sure. And other big news that happened this week.
I know where this is going.
David got a new tattoo.
Oh, that's actually funny. I thought you were going to go to a different topic, which we are going to talk about.
We're going to wrap up with that, but David got another tattoo this week.
If you're watching on the video,
yes, that's
real. That's real. That's not a temporary tattoo. That is a
That'd
real tattoo.
That'd be very elaborate if it was a temporary tattoo.
This is kind of like having to put alt text in a photograph, because obviously some people are listening and not watching. This is a tattoo based on the shoulder patch from my father's Army uniform in World War II, and now I'm going to stop showing off my skinny arms and explain. I should have brought the patch.
I know.
I have it.
We'll post a picture.
We'll post a picture of the actual
I'll make
thing.
a note of that.
But make a note of it. But so we talked before. In fact, we did a long thing about it at the holidays, talking about my dad going into World War II in December 1944. He actually, like, his first experience in combat was Christmas Eve and Christmas Day of 1944. And so we talked about it last year at the holidays because that was the 80th anniversary of him going overseas. And then since that time, I mean, I was thinking a lot about how, during these months through the beginning of May, that was, that whole period of time, he was in France fighting the Nazis. And, so every day I'm like, 80 years ago today, my dad was over there doing this.
So crazy.
Yeah, it is really, really crazy. And then, so I had this shoulder patch. When my dad passed away at some point or another, my mom gave me some of his things, including the patch, his blue enamel infantryman's badge. That's a pretty recognizable thing. The collar insignia from his uniform, and his dog tag, and the patch. And so, like, I started thinking about it. We both have tattoos. We had one apiece. Now I have two. But
now I'll have to get another one.
Now you have to get another one, right? But I just got this idea in my head that I wanted a tattoo based on the shoulder patch. And the shoulder patch, by the way, so I'll describe it, but we will post a picture. It's a circle-shaped patch. There's a red circle on the outside. It has kind of a golden yellow field, and then the image of a snarling Black Panther dominates the center part of the patch, and it's black, and it has white fangs and red eyes, and the red tongue. You can see because its mouth is open, and that my father's division, which was the 66th Infantry Division in the Army, was known as the Black Panther Division, and that's why the patch has the image of the Black Panther on it. So I kept thinking about it, and at one point, a couple months ago, I said, to Jennifer, I said, my birthday's coming up in April. This is what I think I want to do. And I wasn't sure I was really committed to it, to be honest with you. Because, it's an intense experience. If you've not gotten a tattoo, I don't want to ever scare people off from doing it because I think they're very cool. But if you've never gotten one, it is an intense experience. And so I finally just said, yeah, this is what I want. This is my birthday present. This is what I want. So our daughter had gotten a couple of small tattoos from a woman whose shop is located in Forest Park, Illinois, which was close to where we used to live.
Called Skin Abrasions.
Skin Abrasions. There's a bunch of different artists who work on the same place. And I really liked the work that this woman had done for Claire. They were very, very nicely done. Very tasteful and so forth. And so Claire gave me her contact information. I emailed her and I sent her a picture of it, and she said, sure. But as it turns out, her availability was a little bit limited. And the closest date she had to my actual birthday happened to be May 7th, which was this past Wednesday.
She had no weekend appointments.
No weekend appointments. So I said, yeah, sure. I told my boss what I was doing, and I was going to take the afternoon off. And he thought it was awesome. So he was totally for it. So we go there, and she did it. And she did just a fantastic job. I'm really, really happy with it. But in a way, the coolest part about it was that she did it on the 7th. The next day is May 8th, which is the 80th anniversary of the date that the Allies accepted Germany's surrender in World War II. It's called VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, So it was the 80th anniversary. So that was the end of my father's wartime. He was in Germany and Austria for a period of time after that.
But you had to go home after that.
but that was the end of the war. And it just was so cool that she did it on the 7th. And on the 8th, I could say, 80 years ago, the war ended, and my father had been fighting the Germans from Christmas Day, basically, of 1944 through May 8th of 1945. It was just a neat experience. I was just kind of beside myself. I thought it was so cool.
And I attended as well.
She did. She was afraid I was going to cry, so she was there to hold my hand.
I just did say I could hold your hand if you wanted to. And the thing is, like, when you got the first tattoo, mine is small. So mine, I can show you, and I'm not taking my clothes off right now if you're listening to it.
That's a different channel.
But yeah, mine is small, and it's kind of like an insignia, like a loop kind of thing.
It's a little bit like an infinity symbol.
Yes,
but, yeah.
And so mine took like 25 minutes. I mean, it was like so.
But
nothing.
you went first. That was the key. You went first.
However, when David did it the first time and the second time, completely.
My guitar.
Yeah, calm, didn't flinch, didn't move, had a conversation. We were listening to the music they had on there. Like, you wouldn't think that somebody was in any pain at all, but you were.
Yeah, and I just want to say again, I think different people have different experiences, so I don't want to ever deter people from doing something they want to do. Because frankly, even while she was doing it, you're very close to the person who's tattooing, especially when it's like, this is basically on my shoulder, so she's right there.
Right.
And you don't want to be distracting, and you don't want to be staring at the work that they're doing.
And then just make her nervous or something like that.
But I kept glancing over at it every so often. And I would tell her, like, this is so great. This is so cool.
And I took a lot of pictures too.
Yeah, because it was. I mean, and I could tell from the very beginning that she was just doing a phenomenal job. So I was really happy with it. But yeah, it is a very intense experience, and I don't think I would. I mean, I can't say I would never do it again. I don't know that the two that I got were the things that I really wanted. The guitar is on my left arm, and my dad's thing is on my right arm, and those are the two things I really wanted. But I find it to be a really interesting experience. Like, I wouldn't want to do them too close together.
Yeah.
It was, 4 years in between, a little over 4 years in between. It's a weird but fascinating mental exercise because you have to be calm, because the person, you could mess up their work if you flinch or if you, react, or you could make them nervous or uncomfortable, whatever. So you have to figure out as you're doing it, as you're sitting there, because you're passive and they're doing the work, and you have to figure out how to just keep calm, or at least outwardly be calm. And it's a really wild mental experience. It's hard to say that I like it, because there's some uncomfortable moments, but it is a really fascinating thing. And it's fascinating to me that you can kind of make your mind do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I thought it was nice too that throughout the process, it took like 2 hours. She would just say, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Do you need a break? And stuff like that. So I think sometimes they might think like, oh, this person's like really calm, cool, and collected, kind of thing. I'll just keep going. Where on the inside, you're like, I'd really like to have a break right now, kind of thing. So it was nice that she recognized that, that was something that she should ask you, kind of thing. Yeah. So it was amazing. And we went out for a lovely dinner after.
We did, actually. Yeah. And, the healing process, it takes, they put a bandage on it. She said to leave it on for between 24 hours and
3 days.
3 days or something? I can't remember. But I took it off after about like a day and a half, and it was fine. It stings. I mean, even now it kind of stings a little bit, but it doesn't prevent me from sleeping, which is key.
Right.
And it doesn't it doesn't bother me that much. But there's a lot of aftercare, as it turns out, with tattoos. But anyway.
Well, and especially because that part that is black, I mean, that's just all ink in there. So, I mean, it's not like having just like an outline or something. It's a lot of ink on there.
Well, right. And one of the cool things that she did, and I didn't really think about this, so the patch itself is embroidered. So that, all of the colors that we described are thread. It's kind of a shiny thread, so it looks really vivid. Even now, 80 years later, the actual patch still looks pretty vivid. But so the part of it that's in the part of that is the Black Panther itself, other than the eyes and the teeth and the tongue, it's all the same black thread, but the way they did the embroidery, it's contoured, so it kind of shows, the shape of the ears and the scowl on the panther's face, right, and all that stuff. And so she said, well, you can't really do that if you just use black ink for those parts. It'll just be a two-dimensional black surface. It won't really show the contour. So she mixed a dark gray ink that she used like for the inside of the ears and stuff like that, so that it gave the sort of almost like a 3D effect. I mean, it's obviously a two-dimensional image, but she was able to sort of mimic the way the threads in the embroidery are contoured with two different colors of ink. And when she told me, when we sat down and she told me what she was going to do, and she showed me the dark gray ink that she was going to use for the contrast, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
This is so cool. And it came out exactly as
better than you hoped for.
Well, really better.
Yeah.
I will say better than I'd hoped.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the thing I was wondering, and I didn't want to talk to her too much while she was working on you, but I had so many questions, kind of thing. And I didn't even want to ask the other, because there's a couple other tattoo artists that didn't have clients. We were actually, somebody was there when we got there, but left pretty much. So we were really the only people there, besides a couple people that worked there. But I was even going to ask the guy next to us, who is an artist too, like, how do you get the courage to you can say yes, I'm a good artist, or I think I can draw, or something like that. But I mean, how do you get the courage to, and the confidence to every day you have to show up like on your A game, so it's not like you can be like, well, I'm not really feeling it, but I'll tattoo. I'll put something permanent on your skin. Or is there any point where you just like think, oh shit, I just messed up? And
she did not mess up, I will say, happily. No, she did a great job.
I didn't get a chance to ask her that, but I would really like to know, like, how do you practice on that? And didn't you say somebody practiced on their own, like on their knee?
Maybe I don't recall, but it wouldn't surprise me. And the other thing I think people don't often realize is how much sort of behind the scenes work there is. I had sent her, I took a photograph of the, on my phone, obviously, of the patch against a white background. So, you could get a pretty clear look at it. So she had spent a lot of time sketching it out, and then trying to figure out, what color. She had mixed the colors to be, to match. That was the other thing, this sort of yellowish, orangish, goldish background. I mean, it's not a color you would just pick out of a color wheel. Not at all. It's a little bit different. And she matched that perfectly, from a photograph that I emailed. I didn't text it, but I emailed her. And I brought the patch with me, but she already had the ink mixed and everything like that. So she already knew what she was going to do. It was just, but that's the thing, is there's an awful lot. It's not just the 2 hours where you're using your skill as an artist to do the actual tattoo. It's all of the background, thinking it through. She emailed me with some questions and things like that. And there's a lot that goes into it, more than just taking a needle and putting it against somebody's arm.
Exactly.
Really, really, really impressive.
So it was. I was glad I was there to witness it, and
I was glad you were there too. But it really does help to have somebody else to talk to.
And just kind of like take your mind off of it and things like that, because it is an intense experience, and not to just be sitting there in silence by yourself.
And different artists take different approaches, and like the guy who did our tattoos initially was a little bit more talkative through the process. And I found that to be very helpful. Mm-hmm. But, not everybody can do that. You have to be able to really concentrate on the artwork. If you're able to carry on a conversation simultaneously,
you're very talented.
And that can be really, really helpful. And it was. But she was a little bit more quiet than that, but that's okay, because that's her job, and you have to respect. That's her space. That's how she does it, and you have to not interfere with that, because I have to carry it around with me for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so you have to be able to say, I trust you to do it the way you're most comfortable doing it, because that's when you're going to get the best result as the consumer or the customer or whatever. That's when you're going to get the best result. And so that was okay, but it was nice to have you there to chat with too.
And then the other big thing, a little bit more worldwide thing is the Pope's from Chicago.
This is the funniest thing in the world.
We were talking about it this week, even before they decided, because you're Catholic, I'm not, but doesn't matter. The Pope is still a big deal, and it's fascinating how they pick it and everything. And I was saying to David, like, do they have young cardinals? I don't even know, you know. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, there's some in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I was like, I just assumed they're all like 70s and 80s, but that is not true. I never even thought for a million years, nobody did, that it would actually be somebody from the Southside of Chicago.
Right. Well, that's what
Bob.
Bob. my cousin, whose husband, by the way, is named Leo, which is kind of funny. So the Pope took Leo the 14th as his name. One of my cousins said, I'm going to need to see a younger picture of this guy because I might have dated him at one point. Everybody in Chicago has a connection.
Right.
So there's a couple of funny things that just jump out at me. One is, and I don't know if it's funny, in a way it's kind of cool actually, is that, you know, and this is true for a lot of different religious traditions. It's not in any sense a uniquely Catholic thing, but, you know, you said, I'm Catholic, by which I would say, I mean, I was born and raised Catholic. I don't really think of myself I think of myself as Catholic, but more like as a matter of cultural identity. Like, it's not, we don't go to Mass on a regular, you know. And that's the thing that I think is really fascinating about a lot of religious traditions. I mean, it's true of Southern Baptists, it's true of evangelicals, it's true of Jewish people, it's true of, I'm sure it's true of Muslim people. You know, it's more than just a religion. It's kind of like this whole cultural thing that you grow up with. And that really, it just kind of came out in a humorous way in the Chicago area with the Catholic, the Chicago Pope, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people who were joining in the fun and games were not necessarily Catholic, and that's fine. Right. But for those of us who are, or who were raised that way, it's really like wild. It's very entertaining. Just to see the humor attached to it. And it's not disrespectful humor. Like my sister, one of my sisters posted an image on Facebook, I think, and it came from The Onion. The Onion, it was a picture of, I don't know how exactly they did it, probably with AI, you know. It was a photograph of the new Pope with kind of like a Chicago hot dog superimposed over him. So it looked like that was his vestments, you know,
right,
with the tomato wedges and the sport peppers and the neon green pickle relish. And it said, Vatican elects the first ever Chicago-style Pope, or something like that.
Yes.
And that was funny on a number of levels. First of all, the image was funny. But it was also like they chose to use the hot dog as the Chicago image rather than something like pizza, which would be a little more cliche, you know, whatever. Right. But I thought that was like very cleverly done. And when my sister posted it, she said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I just think it's funny. And I think that comment is directed maybe to people outside of Chicago, because within the Chicago area, that's high praise.
For sure.
That's not disrespectful at all.
Not at all.
Drawing those connections between Chicago and any aspect of Chicago and the Pope is a way of praising the Pope, not criticizing him. But it was just such a funny couple of days, and a needed sigh of relief, frankly.
And speaking of hot dogs, the Wiener Circle.
The Wiener Circle. Okay, so there is a legendary restaurant and hot dog stand.
You have to go if you go to Chicago. You should take that part of your excursion.
It's in Chicago. It's called the Wiener Circle. They are famous for a number of things. They are famous for cursing at customers.
Yes.
Cursing at one another.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that Ed Sheeran made a stop there when he was playing in Chicago, and he went behind the counter and they were giving him all sorts of grief. They'll cuss at people. I mean, it's good-natured, but you have to have a little bit of a thick skin if you go there. Mm-hmm. But they also do amazing things, like the restaurant itself dresses up for Halloween. I'm not talking about the employees, although they do too. Like one year, they redesigned the interior of the restaurant to look like the fast food restaurant from Coming to America.
With Eddie Murphy.
With Eddie Murphy. Like with the plaid tablecloths and the plaid, it's supposed to be like a knockoff of McDonald's. I can't remember what the restaurant is called.
I know.
That was dumb. I should have looked that up. But anyway, that's the kind of thing they do. They have, the big sign in front with the removable letters so that they can, a normal restaurant would say, here's our latest special. They have all kinds of political messages on it.
Yes, they do not shy away from anything.
But they are undefeated. So the day that it was nighttime in Italy, but it was daytime here, when they announced the new pope, they put up in Latin, they put up, "He has eaten our dogs." Don't ask me to say the Latin. I don't know, but they had it in Latin, and of course, thankfully, provided the translation. But yeah, and okay, he was born in Chicago, but actually grew up in a suburb on the south side called Dalton, which, by the way, is Dolton, not Dalton.
Yes.
Dalton, Illinois. But he's a Sox fan. Now, initially, it was misreported that he was a Cubs fan. So my being a Cubs fan, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. He's a Cubs fan. Turns out he's a Sox fan. Thinking about it, though, I almost feel like that's more appropriate.
For sure.
Like somehow or another, it would just be almost like a cliche thing if he happened to be a Cubs fan. But being a Sox fan, in this context, almost feels more authentic.
And I actually enjoyed the interviews with his brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Because, obviously they're just as shocked as that he got picked by anybody, kind of thing. But one of his brothers said, as he went through the seminary and then kept on kind of rising in the ranks, of things and responsibility and things like that, they're like, maybe, but it's just such a long shot. So,
it's a pretty big deal to be a cardinal in the first
place. Yeah. So, listening to his brothers, just how they grew up and everything, and just gave him a hard time for doing there. And I also enjoyed the people who were graduated from Villanova, Sox fan, grew up on the South Side. They're just like that, they followed the footsteps of the Pope. Basically, it's that's the stepping stones to it.
Even Spike Lee on Instagram said, well, he's from Chicago, but he went to Villanova, which is in the Big East, and he somehow made the connection between Big East, Villanova, the Big East, the New York Knicks, because the Knicks are doing very well in the playoffs right now. And I'm like, this is one thing I love so much about New York City and Chicago, but it's especially endearing when it's New York. New York is easily one of the most sophisticated and cosmopolitan places on earth, but New Yorkers, just like Chicagoans, can be unbelievably provincial. Everything is about where they grew up, and like Chicago too. It's also not just about being from the city. It's about where in the city you're from.
Right. Like what neighborhood.
like the fact that this guy, the new Pope, is a Sox fan, that makes a big difference to people on the south side of Chicago. That's a big deal, and I love that. We are so provincial it borders on pettiness, and it's fantastic.
And I think that it was funny that they actually had a picture of him at the stadium when the Sox won the World Series. Yeah. So he was there. So I mean, out of all that, there's a picture of him there. So that's kind of funny.
And a guy showed up at the White Sox game, I want to say yesterday, in a Pope costume, and he had the big mitre on his head, but it had the Sox logo on it, which was hilarious in and of itself. The White Sox are now selling an ice cream sundae in a vessel that looks like the Pope's mitre. And anyway, but it's just hilarious.
It didn't take long for people to just get the stuff out there, right. All the things that they could do for Pope.
But there's
merch.
There's one more cool thing about the new Pope, though. It's not just that he's from Chicago. His mom's family is from New Orleans, and they are Creole.
Yep.
He has black grandparents. Most Creole people are maybe African American, Spanish, French, some combination thereof. He's all of those things on his mom's side. So it's just one of the coolest, New Orleans and Chicago. I'm sorry, my friends in New York, but it really doesn't get any cooler than that. It just doesn't. That's just awesome. I said, if it were me, I would have voted for Terrence Simeon as the first Creole Pope, but Leo's okay.
Leo can start and just see how that goes.
Yeah.
So definitely let us know how your week went when you thought about the new Pope, David's tattoo. If you're going to get a tattoo, what would it be? And it's never too late to get a tattoo. I got mine 4 years ago in my, I was going to say early 50s, but it was like 53.
And I was a little older than that.
That's okay.
I was 59.
But don't, if it's not too late, if you want to get one, just get one.
And that's funny because I literally used to think that. For like, I was talking to somebody. Oh, actually, it was my boss. When we were talking about this, because I ended up having to take the afternoon off because it was a long drive to get to the place where she was going to do it, and she could only do it that afternoon. So I was explaining to him, it was a birthday present and this, that, and the other thing. And I said, there was a time when I really thought, well, that ship sailed. I'm too old. I can't do it. It'll be too much like a midlife crisis. And then after a while, it was kind of like, well, now I've gone beyond that point in my life. Now it's like, it's too late for it to be a midlife crisis.
For sure.
So I don't care. This is what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
That's a very
and I actually
liberating
didn't even
thing.
tell anybody in my family that you're getting it until after it was over with. And then I said, when we were at dinner, I'm like, can I text my sister and Hannah and Jacob, my niece and her husband and everything? And immediately within like 2 seconds, Jacob was like, oh shit, that's awesome.
Man.
Our family will see it tomorrow.
But I texted all my siblings
I know.
too.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're talking about your family, but I texted all my siblings right off the bat too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Craziness.
Yeah. So if you listen to it all the way, you guys rock. Thank you very much. And we appreciate you, your support and everything. And like always, if you have any questions or comments for us or have ideas for upcoming episodes, just give us leave a comment.
Yes.
So have a good night, and we will talk to you next time. Good night.
Good night.